There's my name and title. For those of you that have just joined us, my name is Lisa Knights. I look after all the comms and media for Bristol Sport at Ashton Gate Stadium, but in a previous life, I also was a journalist. So I'm looking forward to this next section. Highly topical on safe standing, a step forward in fan experience or a return to football's dark days. Well, I'm joined in this session by Michael Burnett from Furco Seating, the company behind the rail seat. Robin Buchanan, who's a stadium manager at Celtic FC, of course, have installed a safe standing area. Ken Scott from the Sports Ground and Safety Authority, and then John Darch there on the end representing the Football Supporters Federation. First, though, we'd just like to show you a short video to take a look at exactly what is rail seating.
Founded in 1983, Furco Seating Systems have earned a reputation as a global market leader in provision of quality spectator and audience seating. For over 30 years, Furco have designed, manufactured and installed seats for iconic sporting venues across the globe, including the Kuala Lumpur Commonwealth Games, Arsenal's Emirates Stadium, the London Olympic Aquatic Centre and many more. As the desire for fans to stand at sporting events has increased in recent years, Furco saw that a solution promoting spectator safety was needed. Noting the success of safe standing on the continent, particularly Germany, they refined the design of the rail seat system, permitting spectators to stand in complete safety but providing seating when required. The dual-use rail seat provides complete flexibility for sporting venues. Furco's rail seat combines a steel tip-up seat and backrest within a robust metal frame, which forms a handrail for the spectator behind. This high-strength rail and seat combination eliminates the possibility of crowd pressure and the risk of standing spectators falling forward over low seat backs. In 2016, Celtic FC made history with the installation of almost 3,000 Furco rail seats in the first safe standing area in the UK. Viewed as a long-term investment in spectator safety and credited with improving the atmosphere within the ground, the rail seat area at Celtic Park has been praised by both supporters and the club. With Furco Seating's full support, Shrewsbury Town FC have launched a bid to become the first team in England and Wales to install a safe standing area. Furco have always worked with clients to better understand their requirements and refine their products accordingly. To that end, they are proud to introduce the Rail Seat 2 at SoccerX 2017. Incorporating a contoured seat for enhanced comfort and with a cranked standard allowing more headroom when seated, the dual-use Rail Seat 2 represents the next stage in safe standing for Furco. Furco Seating are proud to be at the forefront of the movement towards safe standing areas within UK football grounds.
We're now going to demonstrate retractable seating now as we slide back round so you can all see. So, Michael, let's start with you then. It's your company. We've all now got an idea of exactly what it entails, but it talks at the end there is this groundswell, it feels, of a movement for the government possibly to look at reviewing their decision.
Well, as a manufacturer, I'm principally in the business of providing products that my customers want. And our principal aim is to provide robust and safe products. Safety, of course, is one of the most important issues in football, and it was safety and the lack of it and the problems associated with it that led to the need for all-seater stadiums. The rail seat itself is, in essence, a barrier with a seat incorporated into it. The original rail seat installed at Celtic is based on a German model. Very, very robust, almost indestructible, and it complies with all the various regulations of Europa League and Champions League. The essence of the whole thing is to make sure that fans are always safe, no matter what the environment is. Whether they stand or whether they sit, they should be safe.
Well, Robin, you've installed it, you trialled and have successfully installed it at Celtic. What has been your experience? Because anyone looking at that video, you look at the rake of that stand that it's installed in, and it almost seems like logic dictates that having a rail there does make it safer, rather than having seated areas where all the fans stand anyway.
Yeah, originally we were challenged by our local authority safety team to come up with a solution for fans standing in seated areas. Certain groups and supporters who like to be a bit more vigorous than the others, like to stand, jump around, sing and such like. And in the seated area that was obviously seen as being very dangerous, people falling over the chairs and such like. We looked at various solutions, and the rail seating in Germany was by far the best one for us. We picked the corner site at Celtic Park to make sure that, again, it fitted in with the dynamics of the stadium, so we didn't lose too many seats on the seat kill view. And it's been a fantastic success. It's basically did everything we said it would do. The fans enjoy themselves. They can be as robust as they like. And we've had a very good season. We still have to review every game with the safety team after every game. It's reviewed by the police and by the safety team. We sit down and talk about it. The report goes into the council after every game. And it's been a sounding success, and the fans love it.
Yeah. You talk about resounding success, and it is an interesting way to manage that area. Of course, Celtic were in the headlines a couple of months ago after that Champions League clash against Linfield, but actually one of the things that you seem to find from that was it wasn't anything to do with the actual rail seating. It's another problem that is common in a lot of football stadiums.
Again, that was a separate issue with a particular fans group. We closed a section of the rail seating, but that was only a third of it. The other 2/3 of the section stayed open. The ironic thing about the UEFA game was it was in seated mode, so it was actually a seated section, so it wasn't a standing section.
Do you think having the rail seating actually makes it easier for stewards and safety people to get into that stand?
One of the initial inquiries was basically from the fire brigade and the ambulance service when we first installed it, saying they were a bit worried about how they got in. And since they've actually used it, they say it's fantastic, it's the best thing that ever happened, because they're totally protected when they go into the crowd. Nobody's going to push them, there's no surges. And the same with the police. The police can go into the crowd if they just deal with anybody in there. And again, there's nobody can push them, as happened in the past.
Ken, I'm sure you want to jump in on that, because obviously this is your bread and butter.
Yeah, I think it's perhaps important to remember that everyone's aware of the government's policy in terms of all-seated requirement, but it doesn't apply to all clubs. And so there are a number of clubs, 21 clubs in fact, who have never reached the upper echelons of the Premier League and the Championship and still retain standing terrace areas. So as a government advisor, we're quite comfortable in people standing, and we design right guidance documents that would accommodate that. There are also 9 clubs, 8 or 9 clubs, possibly 8 clubs that have reverted to an all-seated condition or an all-seated stadium, but without having the condition of legally enforcing it. And that's where we are with the Shrewsbury Town project, that the club are looking to install a rail seating product. We, as the authors of government guidance, are concerned that there isn't any guidance out there at the moment that would help to establish a benchmark or a minimum set of standards. And so a couple of months ago, we actually published some guidelines in terms of what a club in the position of Shrewsbury Town would be expected to do to ensure the highest levels of safety. Because like Michael, we're all in the business of making sure that football fans are safe within the stadium in which they're watching football.
And I guess we find ourselves very much in a different landscape to which we were in the early 90s when the Taylor Report made these recommendations and the government acted on them.
That's right. I think at the time, there were many reasons that were put forward amongst the 76 recommendations that came forward from the Taylor Report. We've now seen the advance of a product now that wasn't around in 1989. And had it been then, who knows what the recommendations of Lord Justice Taylor would have been. But I think we need to, as government advisors, I keep needing to return to base, and that is that government have recently reaffirmed that whilst they are very interested in the Celtic pilot, the Celtic model, they are not persuaded at this time to look towards changing their policy in terms of standing.
John, I can see your eyebrows raising at that comment. As representing the supporters sort of federation, I guess it begs the question, at what point will they consider a review? Because the groundswell of opinion within the fans seem to be largely pushing for them to look at it again.
The groundswell is definitely there, and I think we're getting closer and closer, but we're still not there yet. And I echo what the guys have said. Obviously, the primary concern is safety. Every spectator should go to a football game and come home safely afterwards. But as campaigners, we've also thought that spectators ought to have choice. And we were talking earlier, it's recognised now, I think, that a football crowd is made up of a diverse array of people. There are those who like the VIP treatment to sit in the posh seats and have the prawn sandwiches. There are those that want to go into a family section. There are those that want to go on the halfway line and have the best view in the house. And there are also those that like to stand up to watch their football. And I say, as campaigners, we've always felt that we're being denied that choice. Those of us who want to stand up are being denied that choice. And why should we, when that choice is afforded to fans who go to rugby games, spectators who go to horse racing venues? And so we always felt it's been a bit of a prejudice, a bit unfair. And then with seeing over the last few years the rail seats in Germany, seeing that this could be something that could be put in front of the politicians in Britain to say, look, yes, it wasn't an option back in 1989-90. It is something new now. We have standing in our stadia. People are standing in areas not designed for the purpose. Wouldn't it be far better to let the fans who are standing, and will go on standing, stand in a safe area, and thereby also give them that choice?
You've referenced the atmosphere in those sections when there has been standing, and you would argue that it is improved. I guess there is also another argument is about the ticket pricing as well.
Again, as campaigners, I think most football fans would love the price of their ticket to come down. And there is, I wouldn't say an assumption, but there is belief that rail seating, safe standing, might lead to a lowering ticket price. But there's also, I think, amongst the more enlightened fans, a realization that probably it won't, and a fear that some clubs might even try to put the price up for the enhanced experience. I hope most will do at least what Celtic have done, is kept the price the same, and their prices are very, very reasonable anyway.
Yeah, well, Robin, we talk about Celtic. Of course, there's now pressure at Ibrox as well to install this, so it's something that there are other clubs north of the border are looking to do.
Well, say we had lots of clubs come to visit Celtic Park over the last 12 months. I would say the majority of the Premiership clubs in England, not Championship clubs, and obviously all the Scottish clubs have been around. So there is growing swell support from various fans groups within each of these teams to have to go with the rail seating. I think most clubs would like it, most fans would like it, and a certain section of fans would like to try it out. I think they've seen what's happened at Celtic Park, and it is a fantastic atmosphere. Please feel free to watch the Champions League this season again. You'll see the atmosphere at Celtic Park is good anyway, but again, it's just enhanced that bit more with the fans who are in that section. And they sort of lead the rest of the fans as well. They've got their own little capo stand where they do their organisation of how they do their songs and such like. And it's been a great success for us.
So Ken, what is the next step then? How do things move forward? Because there's been much discussion about the government wouldn't look at it until there was a change of opinion, but anyone following the newspapers will see that there's been numerous surveys with Premier League clubs, with the Premier League researching it, the lower league clubs as well. Where do we go next?
Well, I think we are conscious that there is a lobby group that is trying to seek, if not necessarily the return of standing in the conventional form, certainly the introduction of a rail seating product. I think from our perspective, it's very much important as the government experts in terms of advisors that we are at the centre of that discussion, and I think that we do have areas where we share common belief. We have common ground, certainly in the area of making sure that people attending football do so with the highest levels of safety, accepting that there aren't any guarantees. I am mindful, as probably most people are who attend football in England and Wales, and certainly in Scotland, is that we have a high tendency of people now who, notwithstanding the fact that we would expect them to sit in the seats that are being provided, they choose not to do so. So the persistent standing is very much an element that we're concerned about. We've issued guidance to clubs and to local authorities as to how best to deal with that. I've got to be brutally honest and say that it isn't working. Perhaps you would even argue that the situation is getting worse. And we look to products like this. We've got to be interested in any new product that's coming along. And having met with Robin and Ronnie Hawthorne from Celtic, the safety officer at Celtic, on a number of occasions, their issue is tackling persistent standing, seeing rail seating as a control measure. And if you were to ask me that persistent standing without a barrier is safer than standing behind a rail seat barrier, then I think we all know what the answer to that question is.
Yeah, I mean, naturally, emotions have always run very high, and rightly so, on this subject. And I guess, were you surprised by the Liverpool survey? Because obviously that was one of the ones that was always going to be one of the determining factors, that no decision would be taken without the thoughts of their supporters, and their survey was 88% in favour of it in the spirit of Shankly. So.
I think clearly there are sensitivities around Liverpool, and we all will respect that, and certainly government will respect that. But I go back to what we said earlier. We're in a different era now. We're moving forward with products that weren't around at the time. I think we are all recognising now that fan and spectator engagement is very important. That the football fan group is made up of lots of different diverse parts, and and we do support choice. Very often we're seen as the killjoy at the party, but clearly as government advisors we must abide by government policy. But certainly we are discussing with government, who are keen to hear our advice. Certainly following the number of trips I've made to Celtic Park this season, Robin will tell you I'm almost an honorary member of the Green Brigade now,
Season ticket holder.
through my attendance.
I hope you've sold him an expensive one.
But yes, I think the good thing is that we now have dialogue, and that's exactly where, as the organisation that promotes spectator safety in the UK, that's exactly where we want to be.
Yeah, and I guess, Ken, you admitting that the current process isn't working because fans are ignoring it and still standing, and actually given the choice of a new product or similar which enables fans to still stand and actually be safe while doing so, is the logical next step. I guess that's music to your ears, Michael.
It is. We've been pushing this for about 5 years. I think Robin's been pushing it for about 6 years. There's a lot of hard work has gone into it, a little bit of money, a little bit of perseverance. Without John's persistence, we wouldn't be where we are today. Of course, it's music to my ears. We don't as a company try to compete at the bottom end of the market. We don't have very cheap products. We expect our products to be very good and to last a very long time. And that's what we've found with all the stadia work we've done in the UK.
Yeah, and it is a serious investment from the stadium operator to install this. It's a significant cost. And I guess a lot of us are talking about it being installed in a stadium, but actually touching on what we spoke earlier about the away sections as well, because the away sections traditionally do always tend to stand. So if you are a fan that would prefer to stand or would prefer to sit, I guess it's looking at in those away sections as well.
I would have thought so. The away fans tend to be the most enthusiastic, the most vociferous. They're the ones who sing the loudest and sing the most. And anybody who wants to sing tends to stand up. Yeah. And that's why the Celtic success is as it is.
Singing sitting down is never the same. John,
It's
you
not.
probably want to come in on
Yeah,
that.
and our opponents sometimes say to us that bringing in safe standing, bringing in rail seats, would make the game less socially inclusive. That the game has done very well over the last 20 years in attracting women and children and families, and that somehow, by suddenly allowing those fans who are already standing anyway to do so in a safer way, would drive away those families. The reality is, I believe, that certainly if the away sections of major grounds were split maybe 2/3 rail seats, 1/3 normal seats, the football would in fact become more socially inclusive. Because at the moment, if you're an old man with dodgy knees, or somebody short of stature, or someone who simply just prefers to sit down, and you're a fan of Man United, Newcastle, Sunderland, any big club, you cannot go away from home because you know that your entire away fan block are going to stand throughout the entire game. That is socially exclusive. Giving those away fans a choice of a standing area or a seated area would make football more socially inclusive.
Okay, more socially inclusive. I am aware there's a lot of people here. Would anyone like to ask any questions? We've got plenty more to ask, but I want to give the audience some time. The gentleman there.
Hi, it's Matt Slater from the Press Association. It's a question for Ken. Do you think that a change in the legislation will be needed if we are to see rail seats in the top 2 tiers in English and Welsh football?
Well, as the government policy that prescribes that venues are all seated is secondary legislation, it would be simply a change in government policy. But as I stated earlier, the Current position of this government is that they are not minded, or that they aren't convinced yet that we have reached a point yet where they would reintroduce or amend that policy. I would add as well that, you know, to balance that, you've got to remember that in a country that was blighted with disasters at football grounds pre-1989, since 1989, and essentially the introduction of seats to many new venues, we've not had a disaster occur. And I'm looking for something wooden to hang on to at that point. But it's a fact that we haven't. So any shift would have to be balanced very, very carefully against that fact. What I would say is that I did mention that we write guidance, which is universally accepted now. Many people in the room, I'm sure, will have heard to the guide to safety at sports grounds, the Green Guide. We're currently rewriting the 6th edition, which will come out in mid-2018. It's only reviewed every 10 years, so clearly when the last edition was issued in 2008, we didn't have a product such as rail seating. But because we are concerned that the product is only excluded from a certain number of grounds that are bound by the all-seated condition, what we want to ensure is that the new guide that comes out, and I can tell you now it will include a section on what the minimum safe standards would be for rail seating, or dual-purpose seating, as we will call it at that point.
So it is proposing that your recommendation to government in that 2018 book will be along the lines of there are these opportunities and we should be exploring them. In your answer,
it will be that we recommend, well, that we recognise a product that can be installed safely.
yeah.
The limiting factor to that will be, at the minute, there are a limited number of clubs within the Premier League and the EFL that would be allowed to put it in unless government policy changed.
Yeah, and I guess the logical question is, I wonder at what point becomes the tipping point where the government is so minded to review it, given all of the feedback from safety associations, from fans actually attending matches and the stadiums running them.
Who knows with government? There are a number of things that have held it back, not least the awaiting the verdict of the Hillsborough inquest. That is now gone. Or at least we're moving through the criminal prosecution element of it now. We now have the experience of a trial, albeit across the border in Scotland, which is a good feeding station for us to look at and identify what the issues are or were. Hopefully very soon we will have a product at Shrewsbury Town, which will be within the EFL, which, albeit on a much smaller scale, will at least give us a different dimension, different understanding. And who knows?
Yeah, well, and of course, I guess it's natural to stress that inquiry found absolutely no blame attributed to to standing. Questions? Any more questions? The lady.
Hi, my name is Rita Ochoa from AFL Architects, and we currently designing a stadium with safe standing. We completely support the idea. The only question I would like to raise would be the flexibility of the stadiums. So if there's events to be happening in this, sorry my English, events to be happening in the stadium that are more than 90 minutes, these are not the most comfortable seats. They are quite constrained on their geometry, I understand, there's not much you can do, but how do we deal with that?
How comfortable are your seats, Michael?
The original rail seats were seriously uncomfortable, are seriously uncomfortable. I think when they were being designed in Germany, there was no real expectation that anybody would ever sit on them, but they had to provide seats that could be sat on. But that is really why we brought out Rail Seat 2. It incorporates a fairly standard plastic stadium seat within the railing design, and that will provide the same comfort levels as all of the other seats in the stadium. I believe that answers a lot of questions for stadia that have this dual use, where there may be concerts, other events there. But I also believe that it can be used to make other stadia safer without actually bringing in the the permission to have people standing there. The fact is, if people stand anyway, why not put them in an area where it's safer to stand than it is now? And I believe Rail Seat 2 can accomplish that.
Gentleman there.
Hello, I'm Adrien from France. Can safe standing improve the capacity of the stadium?
Who would like to take that one? So,
I don't mind taking it. Yeah, if you look at the Celtic model is simply on a replacement 1-for-1. But it would be possible if the venue was designed essentially from new to have a factor that was maybe more than 1-for-1. Now, to do that would be quite complex in terms of overall design, because it would need additional points of entry. It would need to look at the movement characteristics around the concourses, movement onto and off the seating deck. A fairly robust management plan if you are allowing more people into a row than you would normally have under normal conventional seated conditions. But on the continent, it's not unusual that the factor of 1.8 is applied. The concerns would be, from my end, from the safety end, that if you have more people behind the barrier, then potentially the loading on the barrier can be higher. So the loading that we will be prescribing in the Green Guide, the next edition of the Green Guide, might need to be looked at. I think for me, it's possible, but it would need to be seriously managed. It would be very, very difficult to retrofit it to an existing venue, because we all know that in designing a new venue, it's generally designed to the minimum number of entry points, the minimum width of exiting. To do this would be having to create or provide a latent capacity. But I go back to the guidance we give currently on standing, which is 47 people per 10 square meters. And I apologize if I'm starting to get technical now, but that equates to a floor space factor of around about 0.2. With the conventional rail seating product on a 1.1, then it's a 0.4. So you could actually go to a 2-for-1 position if it was correctly designed. But you know, we aren't going to be pushing the barrier or the envelope too far. But I've got to be honest with the answer to your question. It's possible to do it.
You could look at this from the other point of view, that it could be an all standing stadium at the moment. And that putting rail seats in would not necessarily reduce the capacity if all of the other factors are already met.
Yeah.
So, and particularly on the continent, their rules and regulations may be somewhat different from the ones that we use.
There could also be issues with regard to sight lines, you know, where you have kind of two people within a row. We'd need to look at that, but nothing's impossible.
Gentleman at the back there.
Hello, hi. My name is Andrew Cohen. I'm a sports architect. My question is, actually, I believe strongly in the rail scene, and I think that it's inevitable that it will come true. But I think one of the interesting questions is the amount of rail seating. I'd be interested to hear from Celtic what's their potential future ideas about expanding it, and whether they've had conversations about what is too much, and obviously that kind of impacts on the negative connotations of, you know, the dark old days. And I'll just be interested to hear from Celtic if they've had any future plans.
Well, basically we've got 3,000 rail seats at the moment, and again it's 3,000 particularly because it's in that section of the stadium. If we're building a brand new stadium, it might be a different conversation, but we have to put the rail seating into the actual Celtic Park as it is. So we're very restricted on where we can put the extended rail seats. We have other corners we could probably use if we were going to move into the away section, which is talking about this possibility, and a couple of other corners at Celtic Park as well. Once you come round behind the goal or to the side of the stadium, you start taking out seats. So your view from some of the seated areas would then be, you lose the corner flags. So you start big chunks of your stadium become empty because, you know, unless you take the rail seating right the way around. We do have quite a big waiting list of people who want to go in the area. So there is more people more keen to get into the area. But at the moment, because of the restraints of the stadium, we're not looking to extend it any more than possibly look at the away section.
Okay, where we're just starting to run over, have we got any more questions? Gentleman, final question in the check shirt.
Hi, Gareth Roberts from the Anfield Wrap. My frustration as a fan listening to this is that I've been to Celtic Park and stood in the safe standing section. I've also got a season ticket on the Cop at Anfield. There doesn't seem to be many dissenting voices about safe standing, and yet every time I hear a conversation or a debate about it, the conclusion is, well, we don't really know how it moves forward from here, though. It always seems to get stuck somewhere along the way, and I know that standing in seating areas isn't safe. I fell over myself. I've seen kids getting crushed and crying because they haven't enjoyed it because of celebrations spilling over seats. I think everyone who goes regularly to a football match and goes in a seating area that turns into a standing one because of the way people want to watch the football will tell you that it's not safe. So because we all know that and pretty much accept it, and the panel seems to think the same, what does happen next? How do we move it forward?
I think we probably need a government minister on here.
Well, I can't fill in for that, but I can say that we are scheduled to meet with government, with the sports minister towards the end of this year, where we'll be discussing a whole range of things, which will include the report, which I did on the Celtic project, and looking at the way forward. Because you're quite right, you know, we are being told now that persistent standing is unsafe by fans. We have said the same thing since 2002, when we issued guidance around the fact that persistent standing in seated areas was unsafe. And we need to find a solution to the problem before something goes wrong.
I think, Gareth, the key next step for me, apart from discussions going on between the SGSA and government, is the Premier League finally coming out with its view. And we all know that the Premier League wrote to clubs 2 or 3 months ago asking for their views and asking which clubs might be happy to have their ground be used as a pilot. And we know West Brom went public and said that. And Mr. Scudamore said a couple of weeks ago that the league will be going to government before the end of the year to present its view, having completed its consultation. So hopefully when it does that, you know, a large number of Premier League clubs have told the executive, you know, we'd like you to take this forward. And at that point, you'll have a position where the Premier League are saying to government, we'd like to move forward with this. The Football League already have that mandate. They've had that for the last 4 or 5 years. And although the FA, I don't believe as a body, have ever formally said, we're in favour, Greg Clark, the chairman, is publicly in favour. So I think you'll almost get to the stage of what the government's been asking for a long time, a united front of FA, Premier League, Football League, all singing from the same song sheet, all saying we want it to happen. And I think that will be, you know, a major next step. And then hopefully the discussions that DCMS have with the SGSA can be fruitful and we can move forward.
And just on that, just say, in Scotland when we started off, everybody was against it as well politically. But as we say, we got the SFA, the SPL at the time, and then went to local government and then presented to the Scottish government. It took a long time, but again, I think they eventually saw that the system was a much safer system that we had and what we're trying to put in for. It wasn't for commercial gain, it was certainly for safety. And eventually, after many years, I think about 6 years, as we said, they decided to give it a trial at Celtic, and it's worked really well. They've all been back and said they were happy with what we put forward, but we did have a lot of, again, you know, the governments and bureaucracy to get through, but it does get through eventually, just being persistent. But you do need all the groups, the governing bodies to be behind it, and we had that in Scotland.
I think that's probably a good note to finish it on. The gentleman will be around, I'm sure, to take some questions and answers, but it seems like watch this space towards the end of this year. Gentlemen, thank you.
Thank you.